Hey YouTube, Do-It-Yourself Junkie 369, and today I'm going to be doing another install video, and this time we're going to be installing these Delta vanity lights. I've already done these once in a guest bathroom, but now I'm doing it in my kids' bathroom, and I really love these lights. They're brushed nickel, so they're matching almost everything else that I'm putting in, and all metal construction. Delta's very good. Now, these lights are going to cost about $68.99, so roughly $70. There's a link for them below in Amazon if you like this particular light. I'll show you the existing light fixture in a minute, but main reason I'm going to this fixture is it accepts a normal bulb. A lot of fixtures out there, they take something special, and I hate going out and buying those specialized bulbs. They're usually expensive, and I'd rather use normal bulb, and in this case I'm using the GE Classic LEDs and the daylight light temperatures. I got an 8-pack because I'm doing quite a few light fixtures today, but you only need 3 bulbs. You can get a 4-pack of these for about $8. These are 8 watts per bulb instead of 60 watts, or in the case of a CFL, if you have some of those run about 18 watts. So you're looking at, they say $85 a year per bulb that you replace. And it's not quite that high if you're replacing CFLs, but those have mercury in them where these don't. And you're still reducing your light portion of your electric bill by half by switching to these if you previously used CFLs. And a link for that is in the description as well. So here we have the old fixture. As you can see, one bulb is out, and this fixture uses some very unique bulbs that are quite expensive and use a lot of energy. You can also see one of those lights is turned upright. The reason that is that light is actually broken. If I was to flip it around, it would just come apart. It was like that when we moved into the house. So we'll be replacing this fixture to get something in there that uses normal bulbs and something that's not broken. And then with the LED lights that it will take, we're going to save a lot of energy. After the install is complete, the lights will look similar to this one. This is the other lights that I've already installed. It looks like there's a bunch of shadow up there on the ceiling, but really what it is, these lights are so bright that the camera is automatically adjusting its aperture settings, and it makes it look darker than it really is in here. As you can see, if I pan to the left here away from the lights, all of a sudden the image brightens. So as you can see, the fixtures that I'm taking off the wall, it has 3 lights. The fixture I'm putting into the wall has 3 lights, but the one currently up there uses this special bulb. I don't know how well you can see it here. I'll move it in a little bit closer. And these things, they burn out quite often. I'd say maybe at least once a year, if not every 6 months. And this particular one is a 25 watt bulb. Some of the others that I've pulled out are as high as 65, 75 watts. So basically at 3 of these, we get a 75 watt usage. The fixture I'm putting in there with those LEDs are only 8 watts, so that total light fixture is going to use just 24 watts, a third of what the previous one will. And those LEDs are going to last 5 to 10 years. I've replaced some when I moved into the house, and we've been here for 7 years, and I haven't replaced them since. Really, I'm thinking they're going to at least last 10 years, and I've heard of some going out to 15 years. So a huge difference in cost there. Buying these, even if they cost the same price, replacing one of these a year versus replacing one of those every 10 years. They would have to charge 10 times as much to make using these worth it. And then on top of that, what you save in energy cost is going to reduce your electric bill by about 66%. So I know which one I would pick. Supposedly for this install, all I need is a Phillips head screwdriver and some wire cutters. I have a feeling though that I'm going to need some needle nose to twist the ground wire that connects to the receptacle in the wall to ground everything out. There's a little screw that the ground wire will have to loop through, and usually to put that twist in the wire you need a set of needle nose. And of course I'm going to also use some electrician's tape to cover my wire nuts. So as normal, first step in this process is to turn off the power to these lights. Don't just use the light switch on the side of the wall, because somebody that wired up your house could have done it wrong and they might have accidentally run the neutral wire through a switch. So if you just turn off the light switch, you still have a live hot wire on the fixture, and when you touch it you might ground it out and get electrocuted. So in this case, go down to your fuse box or breaker box and turn off the light there. Since the power's off to this room, you're probably going to have some sort of lamp that you can bring in here, or a work light, and then run an extension cord to a section of the house that still has power. First you have to take off the existing fixture. On this one there's just two little knobs here. Yours will depend on how it's designed. Once those are off, pull it away from the wall. In this case, I needed a flathead screwdriver to loosen this grounding nut. And if you don't have an existing fixture that you're putting this on, these plates are a great way to add fixtures to walls. Basically, you find a stud, you screw this into it, you knock a hole there, and then up in your attic you run the wire into the wall and then out this hole. And there's no need to try to go in and put in a electrical junction box there. So there's a bracket and two screws that come in the kit. I took the two screws and screwed them through the back side of the bracket facing forward. This is the side that will face out from the wall. Now, from previous experience, I know that these screws are going to be too long, and if you try to back them out enough, they're going to interfere with this pivot piece from turning. So you're going to have to trim them with either a hacksaw or a cutoff wheel. And to do that, I take the fixture and insert the bracket. Now this one's bent a little bit, so it's not going through the holes. And the holes on the bracket that you want to use are the inside ones for this particular fixture. And on this, you don't want the bracket laying all the way up against the back of the fixture. That's not where it's going to be positioned when in use. It's actually going to sit level with the outside edge of the fixture. But as you can see, the screws are sticking out a good inch. But the nut that holds it on is only about 1/4 inch deep. So go ahead and screw one of those nuts on. And then when you pull the nut up flush against the face there where it's supposed to be, you can look at the back there and see that this bracket that's going to be laying flush up against the wall is sticking out almost the entire depth of the bracket. You want it to be flush with this piece, otherwise it's going to hang off your wall, and you don't want that. You can use that as a gauge to how much you need to cut off those screws. Basically, whatever this length is, that's how much the screw needs to be shortened. You can go just a little bit shorter, but you don't want to go too short and lose the thread engagement that you need to hold the fixture on the wall. So I'll go modify this down in my garage and then come back and continue the fixture installation. As you can see, I cut these down to about 1 inch in length. If If you go too short, you can always go to the store and buy a couple replacements. Usually they have a hardware section that you can buy individual screws at. Now, as you cut this down, you're going to create a burr and do a little bit of damage to the threads. And that's why I left it screwed through this bracket as I cut it down. Because now, to get rid of that damage and allow the nut to screw on there just fine, all I have to do is back this out through the plate, and the threads in the plate are going to correct that slight burr that was created during the cutting. Also, if you go a little bit long, don't worry. Just make sure it's short enough that you can unscrew this screw, but you don't have to unscrew it so far as to interfere with this pivot. So there is a little bit leeway in getting that distance just correct. So correcting the threads on this to get rid of that burr, I just back it through the plate and it's going to correct that thread. So now this nut should screw on there without any problem. And that one's fine. This one I haven't fixed yet. And if I try to screw the nut on, it kind of binds up, because that burr exists, and that's what I'm getting rid of. This also works if you wanted to take the screws out. You just have to have the appropriate size nut to screw onto that screw, and you screw it down past the point you're going to cut at, and then when you take the nut off the screw, it corrects any messed up threads. Now that the bracket's set up and ready to go, we can go back to dealing with this wall mount. So these two screws that already exist in here, I'm going to flip them around and use them to attach that bracket. And then this ground screw here is no longer needed. That's because it's going to be metal to metal contact, and there's a ground screw located on this bracket. So we'll just use that one. So we'll take this one off and get rid of it. And then simply unscrew the bracket from the wall. Save these screws because you're going to have to reattach this bracket. We're just removing it so we can flip those two screws around and attach the bracket that came in the kit. Now you could use just this bracket and mount it to the wall through to the stud here, but the only problem I have with that is the light is going to be off-centered from where I want it to be at. So as you can see, basically I'm going to use these two screws to screw this bracket, this wall bracket, to the light fixture bracket. So you just place the two together and then screw the screw all the way down. And there'll be some extruding, there'll be some of the screw protruding out the back, most of it. And I really don't have to shorten that because I'm just going to push this screw into the drywall. So it protruding out the back isn't going to be a problem for me because they'll just stick through the drywall. If you're having a tough time just pushing it into the drywall, you can hit it with a hammer, or you can get a drill and drill a little hole. Like hit it with a hammer to mark the drywall and then go in with a drill bit and drill where those marks occur. And you might notice on this bracket there's a lot of holes in here to get this lined up in any orientation you want to, and be able to buy you quite a bit of distance from a stud if you need it. But what I've found is the best orientation for this back piece of this bracket is vertical. And the reason for that is if you try to go horizontal with it, it's going to hit these two pieces inside the light fixture base. So you want it almost vertical. It can be at a slight angle to these light fixture. That way it won't get hit by either of these two pieces. And then these wires are going to have to kind of slip past the bracket or over it. And then once the bracket is on the wall, you line up this outer piece in whatever orientation you need it to be to get it vertical, and then you tighten down this lock screw to keep it from spinning. Your situation in this case could be different, especially if you have a box inside the wall instead of one of these brackets on the outside of the wall. And that's not really a problem, because then you can just use whatever existing screws are there for the box and screw the bracket to that box. And it's a little bit easier. So rather than having to take this bracket off, flip those screws around and attach the light bracket, all you'd have to do is take off the existing hardware, save the 2 screws that connect whatever's there to the actual electrical box inside the wall, and use those screws to mount this light bracket to that electrical box. At this point, I'm just making sure this is vertical. The best idea here is to use a level. It might not be apparent on the video, but there is a outline around this fixture where they painted the wall after the fixture was on the wall, and it is actually out of level. So it's messing with just me looking at it, because I can tell this isn't perpendicular to the previous fixture, but the previous fixture isn't level. If I put it perpendicular to that, you can see up here at the ceiling that it's at an angle. So you'll put a level up against here, make sure that it is level, not necessarily level to the old fixture, but actually level. Because it's obvious that whoever did the previous installation on this particular light did not use a level. And now that that bracket is locked down with the 2 center screws here, now it's time to do our wiring. And this is similar to other light fixture wiring, where you need to take your ground wire and wrap it around the ground screw. Now for this part, to get a loop in it, you may have to use some needle nose. And remember, on this, you want to wrap this loop around the ground screw in the direction that the screw tightens. And what that's going to do is, when you tighten down the screw, it's going to grab this wire and kind of pull it in under the screw. If you wrap it in the other direction as you're tightening the screw, it's going to push against this wire and push it out from underneath the screw. So that's why you always go in the direction of rotation on this thing. Tighten that down and leave enough sticking out that you can attach the ground wire from the light to that ground wire. Because the light base is metal, so it has a ground wire as well. And that way, if something goes wrong with this wiring and you get the hot wire touching bare metal somewhere, it's going to ground out and keep you from getting electrocuted if you were to grab the fixture. And ideally, it would ground out and trip your breaker and keep a fire from possibly happening. Now you use the wire nuts included in the package and basically color match. Bare ground wire to ground wire, white to white, black to black. White is your neutral and black is your live wire. And then, as you can see, there's multiple wires running to each individual piece of the light fixture, and those are connected together with a wire nut and then wrapped in electrical tape. And I'm basically making that same type of connection to the wall. I'm going to put a wire nut on the 2 wires and then wrap that wire nut and at least part of the wire in electrical tape. And there's no need to twist the wires together before you add the wire nut. You just lay them beside each other and twist the wire nut down. And you want, as you twist the wire nut down, you want a couple turns to show up in your insulated piece of the wire. Or at least that's how I've always done it. This fixture is heavy enough that you probably want somebody to hold it for you, or you want to wrap a piece of wire from it to the bracket here to take the weight rather than letting it hang on the actual electrical wires. And then put your electrical tape on those. I wrap in the direction that the wire nut tightens. And then make sure to get a couple wraps on the wires themselves. In this particular case, I don't know if it matters which direction you wrap the electrical tape. I just like going the direction that the wire tightens. And you just repeat the same process with your ground wire. And normally with the electrical tape you can just rip it if you pull on it hard enough, but for some reason this stuff has been really hard to rip. So I've been using a knife to cut it after I'm done wrapping. And now, normally you would push these back into the hole they came out of, but since the hole is blocked off by the bracket, you just kind of mash them down to the bracket and make sure there's enough space in here to get everything behind this plate and not interfere with putting the basically you want to make sure everything's behind the plate as you put it on the wall and not interfere with it going onto the nuts and sitting flush up against this wall. And so there you saw me repositioning the wires a little bit. Had both the wire nuts on top of that bracket, and that was enough depth there to interfere with this plate going up against the wall flush by almost a full 1/4 of an inch. And once that's up there, last part is to take the 2 nuts in the kit and screw those down hand tight. Basically tight enough to hold it on there, but not tight enough to compress anything. And you don't want to put any sort of vice grips on these nuts to tighten them, because then you risk causing damage to them. Now the next step is to attach the glass globes, and these nuts are what hold those on, so you'll have to take them off to put the glass on. Now normally, if you were doing this all at one time and you had the paint available, what you would do is go in here, mask this off, and then paint over this part of the wall that's not painted. Currently I don't have any paint that color matches this wall, and I think we're switching to a different color. So for right now, I'm going to put the glass on, and what you would do before you paint is go in and take the glass off, because it's going to be really close to this wall, and it's almost impossible to paint behind one of those glass globes without getting some paint on the globe, which isn't a big deal because you could just use some paint thinner or something to remove the paint, but it's just easier to not get it on there in the first place. So you put one of these globes over the light socket, and then you screw on this nut, and you want the flat flange portion of it to be facing up into the glass. That's what provides your support for the glass and keeps it from cracking. I always find these difficult because it's a metal on ceramic connection, and it's not easy, even with these giant coarse threads, to get everything screwed together properly. With my hands, because they're large, once I get close to it being tightened, I just kind of brace my hand against the globe and the nut to lock everything together, and then I'm really turning the globe and the nut all at the same time to get it tightened down that last little bit. Once that's complete, the last step is just to add your bulbs, and hopefully you know how to put a light bulb in. It's a pretty standard thing that people have been doing for ages. These particular LEDs actually are glass bulbs, so don't tighten them in there too hard. Just kind of light finger pressure on them, because I don't want one of them breaking. The next step is to go turn on the power. Usually before I do that, I make sure the light switch is off so I can go turn on the power, come back, and then be there for when the light turns on in case something starts going wrong. But if you follow the install instructions, really there's not much possible to go wrong, as long as you made sure the wire nuts were on there correctly, the correct wires were matched up, and there's no bare wires hanging out anywhere other than your ground wire. So power at the electrical box is on, and we just have to flip on the light switch. There you have it. A new fixture that matches the flush mount lights I've been doing in the rest of the house, and it's going to more appropriately match the bathroom fixtures that we're putting in here. And it uses normal bulbs, which means we can also throw in these normal style LED bulbs and save quite a bit on electricity. If you like this fixture or the bulbs I'm using, they're located in links below down in the description. And thank you for watching. Please hit that like and subscribe buttons for more videos. Have a great day.